Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast, available on all platforms including YouTube if you prefer to watch. My name is Jeremy Blaine, CEO of Performance Works International, Executive Director of the Transformational Leadership Acceleration Institute, and Managing Partner of Diversity Talent. My aim is to bring insights from leaders, experts, and highly talented professionals from around the world. Insights, stories, and advice from the front lines of modern leadership to engage, inspire, and mobilize progress back in the workplace. Every episode is a learning opportunity for us all. The Rethink Leadership podcast also supports charities around the world. Each episode is in aid of a cause chosen by my guests, and to date I'm proud to say we've supported over 60 global and local great causes. Curiosity killed the cat. A warning, a jazz funk band from the UK, an opportunity to take a calculated risk or learn something new. Well, who best to dive into this topic than my guest today, Stefaan van Hooydonk. He's the founder of the Global Curiosity Institute and author of the best-selling book, The Workplace Curiosity Manifesto. Stefaan researches the topic of workplace curiosity in companies and believes that curious individuals need curious environments to thrive, especially in times of turmoil, change and growth. Companies, leaders and employees at all levels need to embrace intentional curiosity. So how do they do it? Well, Stefaan is the expert, and with the help of a number of diagnostics he creates insights on what drives and what enables or prevents individuals and organisations to show up curiously. So I'm curious to find out more. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. Let's meet Stefaan and find out a little bit more. Hello, Stefaan. Thank you very much for joining us. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, your business, and maybe something that not many people know.
Thanks. Beautiful question, Jeremy. Thanks for having me, first of all. I'll start with the last question. I bought a piece of land in the spring of last year, 2 hectares. So it's about 5 acres, and I'm building a food forest on top. I've been traveling so much in my life that I want to give something back to nature, and I'm really into it. So that's next to my curiosity. We're going to talk about curiosity, but not many people know that I have already close to 100 trees planted, and I'm working there every day. Actually, it's a great also metaphor to, if we start something new, our curiosity tends to be so much higher. We tend to ask more questions when we're new in a relationship, when we are new in a job, when we're starting a new company, when we're new in a leadership role. And then afterwards, it kind of slows down a little bit, our question strategies. We can talk about it later. So Stefaan van Hooydonk, I'm Belgian, married still to the same partner from way back, 4 children. And I've been pretty much my career has been spanning 3 elements. First, I was in investment consulting in Far East, China and Hong Kong. Then I was running learning operations for many organizations, chief learning officer, head of corporate university for big companies like Nokia, like Philips, I've been working in Finland, in Saudi Arabia, in India, and a couple of other countries, also the UK. Your country. When I was with Cognizant, that was my last job. Responsible for the learning and development of 300,000 colleagues. So big organization, IT. And that organization actually triggered even more the curiosity I had already in myself. Like, how do I get out of the way as a learning leader? How do I empower people to learn? How do I kind of move away from that compliance stuff? Because there's so many new computer languages coming in every week. So how do I empower people? And I realized that actually I bumped into the notion of curiosity, intentional curiosity, that it's actually a muscle, and that you can grow it with people and leaders. And but many people create barriers for themselves, and many organizations also create barriers. So that was kind of the beginning of my story. And I don't want to enter everything already, but that's a little bit the story that I have, and I hope I explained myself a little bit.
You certainly did. I love the idea of a food forest. I have to say that's the first I've got. You really stimulated my curiosity in the first sentence. So thanks for that. So and let's stick with that now. So you talk about curiosity, and there seems to be a real buzz around it at the moment. So why curiosity and why now?
Well, I think we're all coming out of COVID. We're in the 21st century, and if you're looking at so many so many new things that are that we're faced with that we don't have answers to. So the past is not always a good recipe for the future. And it used to be like all the way in the 20th century, a company like Kodak could run for 100 years and do their own same trick until the environment changed. And the big difference between the 20th century and the 21st century for me is the 20th century for me is the century of scope and scale of big corporates, and the 21st century is a century of ideas. Now, if we think a little bit deeper about ideas, ideas are all about curiosity. Ideas are all about asking better and deeper questions. And to make it tangible, let's compare two companies like Marriott and Airbnb for a second. Kind of one company kind of coming from the 20th century, and the other company being more of a recent development. Both beautiful companies. Nothing wrong about Marriott. Nothing wrong about Airbnb. Both, but kind of set up in a very different environment. And it takes Marriott about 90 years to amass 700,000 beds. And Airbnb does it in 4 years. Completely different business model, but it's for Airbnb. It was not about the building; it was about the service. While scale and scope was the 20th century modality. So, why is curiosity important? I think I've already implicitly spoken about it. We have so much more speed around us in terms of companies, in terms of also individuals. Shelf life of knowledge is coming down when if we don't keep on learning, keep on upgrading ourselves without others telling us, we become dinosaurs in the world. Just standing still is already going backward if the environment is moving quickly around you. And what I've been talking to many since I set up the Global Curiosity Institute, since I wrote my book, it's many leaders and but also artists and philosophers and podcast hosts are telling me that curiosity is really so important for the survival of our individuality, but also the survival of our companies. Some research was done with actually SurveyMonkey did some survey about what made a company survive during COVID, and they came up with two things. One was curiosity, openness to the future, openness to status quo, not being afraid of challenging it. And the other dimension was agility. How quickly can I put these ideas in practice? Well, what you often see when there's a lot of stress around us, we tend to go in a fight or flight mode. We're not interested in new stuff. That's why you see, for instance, one of the great barriers for curiosity is stress. But maybe we could talk about it later on. Do I make sense?
You make a lot of sense, and the stories of Kodak, Marriott, Toys R Us, they're very present. We refer to them, and the new era businesses that are being set up and have been set up in the digital era, coming with no baggage, no structure from tradition, rethinking and getting curious about an industry and why it's not been disrupted until now. Airbnb, let's say, Spotify for music, all of these kind of things demonstrates exactly what you're saying. The two things actually, the curiosity on one hand, but then the agility on another, and the fact that can speed up, make mistakes, keep going, learn on the fly, while not having the barriers of a legacy structure that's years, decades, centuries old.
Can I, before we go on, can I add one extra? That doesn't mean that all 20th century companies are doomed. A good example is Disney Plus is overtaking or has been overtaking Netflix. So it's kind of the old boys are overtaking the new companies if they get their act together. Typically, yes, startups are much more exploration minded, much more into curiosity, and then after a while we focus on it's all about efficiency games. But once these older companies are getting their act together, they can reinvent themselves. Microsoft is also a great example under Satya Nadella. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree with that. And we see that, and this is how I would explain business transformation as well. It's the legacy organizations that aren't making that shift to the 21st century, but those that are speeding up. They're learning from the disruptors and in turn disrupting the disruptors, which is quite interesting, in fact. But actually, I want to get a little bit more basic than that at the moment. I want to ask you, maybe it's an unfair question, I don't know. How would you define curiosity? And if we're not doing curiosity, what's the opposite?
Okay. Beautiful question. For me, the definition, and I try to come up with a definition that's relevant both for individuals but also for systems like teams and organizations, because they can also be curious or not. So for me, curiosity is the mindset or the intentional mindset to challenge the status quo, to explore, discover, and learn. So it's about mindset, it's about challenging status quo, and it's about a notion of discovery, exploration, and eventually learning. And I think all of these dimensions are important for leaders and also in the corporate space, I think. Now, there's I want to add one extra dimension is that typically when we talk about curiosity, we think of intellectual curiosity. A child being interested in the world and Einstein discovering the universe, me learning or reading a new book or being interested in the world, or you could say in it. And that's a very relevant and important type of curiosity, and that type of curiosity leads to often to innovation, to creativity, to new exploration, to Columbus discovering the new territories type of a thing. No, but there's two other really and equally important curiosity levels, and when we reflect on it a little bit, I think it might make sense. One is the first one is what I call social curiosity, interested in other people, inquisitiveness, and who is Jeremy sitting in front of me? Who are the people that I know, the people that I live with every day? Am I keeping my curiosity or am I taking them for granted? When I'm spending my Friday afternoon reflecting on the week, and I think about my relationship with my 16-year-old daughter, then was it a week of judgment or was it a week of curiosity type of a thing, you know? So empathic curiosity, and that leads to empathy, that type of, if you're really good at it, this type of curiosity. And then a third dimension of curiosity, which is probably the hardest, is curiosity in ourselves. What are my values? What are my superpowers? What's my purpose? Why was I born? What are the narratives and the beliefs, even the limiting beliefs that I tell myself why I should show up or why something is right or something is not right? And so these I always playing around. Because for me, it's not only intellectual curiosity because we often kind of automatically refer to that. It's also about interested in others and interested in myself. Now, interesting, you can also kind of superpose it onto teams. A team can be curious about the world, curious about others, and curious about itself in terms of and companies as well. Now, the opposite of curiosity. What do you think? What comes to mind first? Yes.
Well, when I was thinking about it, I'd say, well, I'm either curious or not curious. So I wouldn't know. I haven't come up with the word yet that says what I'm not or what the opposite is, which is why I'm asking the expert in you. So it's a tough one, isn't it?
I've been thinking a lot, and especially when you're looking at these three dimensions of curiosity, it's even harder. I've actually settled on the word conformity, and for me, conformity is always the starting or the ending position towards we're drawn. like, remember when I said in the beginning with my food forest, in the beginning, you're curious about something, about a relationship, a job, or a new project that you have. And after a while, you stop asking questions because you think you know. And conformity is that it has this gravitational pull towards itself that after a while we conform to our beliefs of things, to our thoughts, to the environment. And there's two types of conformity: the conformity that we do to ourselves and the conformity that others upon us. The conformity we do to ourselves is the world is too complex a place. We want to create an environment which is controllable, or that gives us the illusion of control, of predictability, that the toothbrush I used yesterday didn't turn into poison suddenly. We create all these beliefs to make life easier. That the key that I'm having in my hand will still fit on the door. So and that's why we often take the same roads to our office. That's why we often go to the same restaurant and order the same type of food, because we know it's good, and it takes kind of cognitively, it's more stretching to look for some new restaurant and a new dish and a new everything. And that's why we have lunch with the same type of people in the office. Because it feels comfortable, and it's harder to go and meet that person that is completely off, that is has a different value system and that we don't really like. It's a lot of cognitive effort to have those. So, and also when people come up with new ideas, we often push it away because it doesn't fit our own way of looking at the world. And so that's the curiosity, the conformity we do to ourselves, and then you have the conformity that others do upon us, and we happily comply to the conformity of the environment. Why you should why you should wear in such a way, why you should behave in such a way, because, or why you should behave in this team in such a way, because we all want to be seen as a loyal member. We all want to be seen as a loyal member of the tribe, and that's why it's hard to raise your finger if you really believe that the team is on the wrong track. To raise your finger and say, "Boys and girls, I think we're doomed here," because that's a very unsociable and unfriendly thing to do in many teams. Then that's a conformity that we'd rather not open our mouth to say so. And that's why intentionality is so important, because conformity is this pull that's a given. So we need to intentionally pull ourselves away from it and towards curiosity. And then you have two speeds. Pulling a little bit is getting you to learn about the things you're already familiar about. So you could call that narrow curiosity. I get better at leadership. I get better at whatever my field of expertise is. If you pull even further, then you start exploring territories that you had never seen before, that I call broad curiosity, things that you have not experienced. That's why I often encourage people to maybe buy the book next to the book you want to buy next time you're in a bookstore, so you can open up yourselves, or go and visit another section in the same bookstore and look for an area or a podcast or any piece of information that you've not been. So that's a bit about the definition. Mindset of challenging the status quo, exploration, learning. It's opposite, and also the three avatars of curiosity.
Fantastic explanations there, Stefan. And of course, logically, I can get that of how important it is. But many people tuning in will say, well, that's all very well, but I can be curious, but from a business perspective, what are the benefits of me, my team, my leadership team, whoever it is doing it, when I consider individuals, teams themselves being curious as teams, and the organization being a curious organization?
Well, I think we've established already when we spoke about in the beginning about Marriott and Airbnb and the speed that we're facing on, that if we're not open to the future as an individual or as an organization, we are, and if we're not curious about the world of unknowns and ask better and deeper questions, we're going to stand still. and standing still in this environment and in this time and age is always not a great thing. Benefits of curiosity are numerous. Curious professionals make more money and make faster careers than their lesser curious peers. Curious professionals are better at dealing with change, because remember we spoke about conformity. If you're more into your conformity zone, you're going to push away change. And interestingly, I've been working with some companies who are changing the notion, or they're changing the wording of change into curiosity, because change has been such an overused term, and change is always something that somebody else is doing to me, while curiosity is something in the middle that you have to go halfway towards meeting that quote, kind of that change, that transformation. So curious people learn faster, they learn deeper, they have better memories. Curious leaders create more productive teams. Now, it's interesting that there was some research done by Francesca Gino, a Harvard professor, around the notion of workplace curiosity. And she came up with 3 insights. It's a beautiful Harvard HBR article that came out in 2018. 3 really insights. The first insight is it's much more important than ever thought before, curiosity. Like, again, if we're into a 20th century paradigm, it's not important. And that's why many companies have been struggling a little bit with innovation and with continuous improvement. Continuous improvement may be just about right, but changing drastically our product lines and our ways of services was not so well done in the 20th century. But when the environment is changing quickly around us, it's so much more important. So that's the first insight. The second insight is that managers can actually change, and leaders can change the way their operation is being managed by tweaking their culture, by tweaking the way they manage people towards a more curious environment. And the third dimension that she came up with, which is probably quite surprising, and kind of that goes beyond the benefits questions, is although many leaders say they valued inquisitive minds, actually many stifle it. Because, and also that's my own research, when I'm asking leaders, do you think that curiosity is a great thing for an organization? It links to engagement, it links to innovation. 90% say, of course, yes. When I'm asking them a follow-up question, how much are you inviting curiosity into your own team? Only 50% of them say yes. That's a bit about theory and practice. In theory, you say yes, but in practice, I'd rather have somebody else deal with it, because I'm focused on focus. I'm focused on efficiency, and I fear that if I allow curiosity in, I'm going to get off track from my focus, and that's kind of an ingrained kind of 20th century mentality. Let's focus on exploitation, and the exploration stays outside. And often when you're dealing with, especially in the projects management sphere, many teams often get directly into action, so they don't spend time thinking about asking some basic questions. What do we set out to do here, and what are we trying to achieve? And also, many teams don't do after action reviews after their projects. What can we learn from thing? And you see that also in many organizations. If the sales team loses a deal in Australia, Argentina would have no clue what happened. There's not a lot of learning across organization, not a lot of curiosity, especially when things go wrong. Because that's another dimension that I try to measure is the failure dimension. Now, how much are we open to failure as a team, as an organization? How much do we allow it? Is it career limiting, or is it career uplifting if somebody makes a mistake and learns from it for the greater good of everybody else? So there's many other I think benefits, but I think it became clear that it's, especially in times like we're now, not being open. You can give it any name you want, whether it's curiosity or openness or inquisitiveness. you're going to kind of run behind. And that's why you often see more, I'm starting to see more and more companies who are adopting curiosity as part of their corporate values or as part of their team values. While before it was, and it's not only the new companies, also older companies.
So you mentioned the word measuring there, and measuring curiosity, and I want to bring you back to that if you don't mind, and ask you a very simple question. Can we actually measure curiosity? And if that data exists right now, what does it tell us?
Oh, cool. That's actually, I keep on talking. I'm so into this zone of curiosity. My apologies. No, absolutely, you can measure it. Often people think that curiosity is one of those kind of fluid things, and we hardly have a definition, and it's hard to define it. Actually, you can define it. You can measure it, and I've created two diagnostics now. And for the first one, I built on the shoulders of giants of other people of other work that has been done before, and I measure people's intellectual, empathic, and self-reflective curiosity. And then I have another diagnostic, and there's now about close to 6,000 people have taken it. It's in 8 languages, and people take it online, and every day I see people taking it from everywhere in the world, and we're starting to have some new languages coming in now. And then I have another diagnostic, which is measuring the environmental aspects of curiosity. How much is the organization, through its culture, through its processes, through its practices, allowing curiosity from happening? And there I measure, for instance, leadership style, learning culture, readiness for failure, etc., etc., as it all links to curiosity. Now, what do the data tell us? About 24% of the population tells us that they're regularly curious in big multinational companies. So that means that 76% is curious at times, but are not regularly curious. Also, there's absolutely no difference between men and women in terms of curiosity. And maybe I needed to take a sidetrack, because in some subcultures, curiosity is a negative thing. In the English language, you already talk about curiosity killed the cat. Or in Polish, there's curiosity is the first step to hell, they say. Or in Romanian, they have a saying, curious people die young. And so, and also, in depending on the organization you are, you might find a more or less positive or negative definition of curiosity. And some managers say that curiosity is good, but I'll be curious. I don't want my team to be curious, because they have to be just doing the job and be efficient. So and in some of those older connotations were telling that women were more curious than men. Because actually, if you're looking at the Bible, Eve, let's use the first scientist, you can almost say, no, the first person interested in eating the apple from the tree of knowledge, because God has told both Adam and Eve not to eat from. They could eat from everything, but not from that apple. And then you see throughout the ages, often other stories like Lot or Pandora, that where women were put in a notion that they are the more curious ones. And you see in the 18th century, for instance, there was the opposite of curiosity was science. Because science was dealing with universal truths, and curiosity was dealing with more temporary truths, like looking in the mirror to see how my looks are. So curiosity has had this entire journey, and it has changed over time. And curiosity killed the cat is, and also now from the 1950s onwards, curiosity became a very positive thing. Well, before it had kind of more of a negative connotation. Before the 1950s, curiosity was all about gossiping, or children poking their noses into things that they were not supposed to. And then after the 1950s, it became positive. That's why if I compare men and women on the intellectual curiosity side, they're absolutely equal. On empathic and self-reflective curiosity, women are slightly better than men are in empathic curiosity and self and kind of being in tune with themselves, their own values, their own purposes. Also, some other statistics could be that startups are 4 times more ready to learn from mistakes compared to grown-up companies. Or middle managers are about 4 times less ready to say that curiosity is cool when I compare that to senior executives or to first line managers. Or and I've got many other statistics coming out, but there's many measurements that come out across countries and across. And what I'm trying to do now with all my databases is get it to make more and more sense out of it, and compare industries, compare countries, compare genders and managers.
Well, you've left us curious for more of that data. I'll tell you that for sure. So we'll come back to that, and I think for those tuning in, we'll come back at the end to get some details from you around the Global Curiosity Institute, your book, where they can find out more, and actually connecting with you. But the other point that you've mentioned a few times in here now as the last point that we'll cover around leaders and managers. Actually, we've talked about them, whether they stifle or whether they enable curiosity, whether they value it themselves but not in others, etc., etc. So if we're to change that paradigm, what is the role of leaders to nurture more curious workplaces as a whole? And can you tell us what companies or leaders are doing it well?
Well, maybe about companies. I think one company that springs to mind immediately is Microsoft. Indeed, when Satya Nadella came on board, 2014, I think it was February, he didn't want to change the business dimension. First of all, he wanted to change the culture from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all culture, to embrace growth mindset, to challenge themselves, basically to be a curious environment, a curious company. And when you're looking at results, it has been quite remarkable how Microsoft has fared since then. There's also in if you're looking at some companies are really good at if you're looking at Apple, I think in terms of customer delight and customer curiosity, they're over and above the board. Now, let's talk a little bit about the managers themselves and what managers can do to get better at it. I think those managers who are ready to put it on the management agenda, first of all, are kind of I find they're being more efficient in the space of curiosity. First of all, managers that have a clear definition of curiosity and communicate that to the team. Managers who create the space and the time for themselves, but also others to be curious. Managers and leaders who make sure that curiosity is embedded in recruitment, in rewarding, in management, in innovation of the company. Managers who are role models. Managers who are ready to show up with what I call confident humility. Managers who learn. Also managers who learn themselves make sure that the team also learns. I did this diagnostic, or I did some research in my last company, Cognizant, and I tried to find a correlation. Is there a correlation with where if the manager learns a lot, the team will learn a lot? Intuitively, we can think, oh, there must be some truth to this. And actually, I've proven it with data. The more the manager learns, the more the team will learn. And not because the manager actually goes through the motion of reading books or looking at podcasts or going to courses or whatever, but the manager is creating this behavior that it's expected behavior for me as a leader to upgrade my knowledge or upgrade my knowledge about people, about the world, and myself. And that creates automatically also a desire in the team, because they say, well, apparently it's required behavior here, and they kind of also get going. The opposite is sadly also true. If the manager does not learn, the team stops learning, and the team falls flat in terms of consumption of knowledge and learning hours. So role modeling is really important. Also asking for feedback. Reverse feedback is such an important thing. And what I found in my research, only 20% of first line managers are asking for reverse feedback. About 46% of middle managers and only 6% of senior leaders is asking for reverse feedback. So try to be in that group that is asking for feedback. How am I doing? And I think that's one of the better questions we can ask, not only in the workspace, but also at home, maybe. What do I need to do to become a better father? What do I need to do to become a better colleague or a better partner? Ask that question and then give it some silence. And it's a hard question, and many people are not ready to be vulnerable because they're not respecting the other person enough, or because they're not sure what the answer will be, and there's other reasons why we're not asking that question. So asking for feedback, and maybe also let's become, for leaders to become aware of their question strategies. We often assign questioning or question strategy with children. And indeed, research shows that kind of kids, on average, they ask about 73 questions a day. Leaders ask about 6 questions, of which the majority of questions are closed questions. And clearly, closed questions are not curious questions. So, no. I often encourage leaders to question their question strategies. Are they open or closed questions? Are these questions that confirm what we know already, or questions that are open to discover something completely new? And are we allowing our employees to ask questions that we don't know the answer to? Because in many cultures, if the manager is paid more money than the rest, and is supposed to know more than the people around him or her. And not knowing is seen as a sign of weakness in many cultures. Well, actually, research shows it's actually the opposite. The more a manager says that he or she does not know, the more respect he or she gets. But also measuring, I think for managers, I think a great way is also to measure curiosity in their teams. In meetings, inviting minority perspectives. Some really great examples I've seen with rotation chairmanship, something very simple to do, kind of having a person rotating around, or changing agenda points into questions. Celebrate, discuss failures in the team. So there's many things that managers can do to really start taking that path towards being a role model, putting on the agenda, measuring it, and doing some magic in meetings. And then maybe also just nurture. I said it already, I think, give time and space. Nurture the people that have it ready in them, but also nurture those people that have lost their curiosity over the years because of previous managers, because of stress, because of other things.
Right, thank you so much, Stefan. And for me, the big takeout from that piece and what you said before, particularly for leaders and managers, as we were just finishing talking about, and then that movement from know it all to learn it all, is a real cultural evolution. And it's important to build that, but embed it so it becomes how we do things around here. I think that's kind of how you put it. And some of those statistics that you mentioned there, it's no wonder. I was chuckling to myself as you talked about the number of questions kids ask versus leaders, and how many times do adults say to their children, stop asking questions, I've told you once already, and so on. We start to stifle curiosity without even knowing it. So we've got to get conscious rather than unconscious about that. Conscious curiosity. So, Stefan, I'm absolutely sure that many listening or watching this will want to get in touch, want to get hold of your book and check out the Institute. How do they do that?
The easiest is to go either to the website, globalcuriosityinstitute.com, or the book is the Workplace Curiosity Manifesto. That's available on pretty much all global and local platforms, in paperback or Kindle, and LinkedIn is always a good way for to get in touch with me directly, I think. Oh, cool.
Great. Well, look, thank you so much for joining me. What a great start to this new season. You mentioned it first off, is to start exercising that curiosity muscle. I really appreciated listening to you and learning from you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jeremy. It was a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. Please like, comment and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.